Well, we on? All right, 6 o'clock. Regular meeting of the Ohio Valley Sanitary District. Order at 6 o'clock. I think we have to get approval for a 2449 tonight for Director Curtis.
Jack,
Yes, ma'am.
you need to address the board and request your remote attendance permission.
I request my permission to meet remotely.
We need a motion
Vote on that? I think it takes a vote of the,
Yes.
of the quorum, yeah.
Director Kintosh,
Yes.
Director Berg,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich.
Board members, I'd like to maybe address you briefly on the attendance rules, because there has been an update.
Beyond 2302?
2302 is what I'm referring to, which went into effect in January of this year. And as a practical matter, it doesn't affect the number of times board members can appear remotely, but it did just make it a little more clear that a district that meets regularly once a month, you can only have 2 attendances at a regular meeting per year. So it's really
We didn't change the numbers.
depends on the number of times you meet regularly per year. So
That calendar year?
calendar year.
So the maximum we could have done for Jack is 2 anyway.
Yeah, so I believe that this is Jack's second of the year. So unfortunately, the further attendances by Director Curtis at regular meetings would have to be in person.
Okay.
Wanted you all to be aware.
Attend the member of the public.
Attended
Yeah.
as a member of the public, but couldn't take any, obviously, deliberation or official action.
Not voting.
Right. That's all I had.
Thank you. I guess we should go ahead and call the roll, Allison, so we've got it recorded anyway.
Definitely. Director Curtis.
Here,
Oh, okay, great. Director Kintosh, Director Berg,
Here.
Director Quillisi,
Here.
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
and Chair Stone.
Here,
And there's for the record, Director Martinson is absent.
thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Begin.
Allegiance to the flag
flag of the United States of America.
to the
To
republic
the republic
which
for which
stands
stands
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions or amendments to the agenda? Okay, on to item 5, public concerns. Items not on the agenda in a 3-minute limit.
I have a speaker card for item number 5 from Rick Knack.
Thank you, Chair Stone and members of the board, for allowing me to address during this concerns period. As the board appointed Mr. Mexstroth as interim general manager on August 26, 2024, staff has gone through a period of adjustment. I feel that I have a clear understanding of his management style and working demeanor. It's only 6 months into his employment with the district. I'd like to provide you with a summary of some recent communications. A member of the board and the district's legal counsel to ensure that ex parte communications are be disclosed to the full board. On Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, Bill Stone called me to see if I was at the treatment plant, had a few minutes, and I told him I had time to meet with him. Bill arrived around 11. We walked around, talked about classic cars, and then for the completed TMDL project. As we talked in the lobby, and Bill stated, "You don't like Scott, do you?" The only thing I didn't like is he insulted me 16 years ago when I shared a story about the Camarillo project I was working on. Following day, I emailed Bill the resume that I prepared when I applied for the job with OVSD. Monday, September 30th, Bill sent me the resume. A couple of days after meeting with Bill, Mr. Mexstroth scheduled a one-on-one meeting at 10 a.m. on Monday, October 7th, 2020. Discuss upcoming projects with me. As OVSD was still recruiting for the permanent general manager position, I did not believe that a one-on-one meeting was appropriate and that it might give Mr. Mexstroth an advantage over other applicants. The scheduling topic by Mr. Mexroth just reinforced my previous opinion of his tactics. For the next following months, my concerns only grew. January 24th, 25, I sent an email to District Legal Counsel Dennis McNulty, my concerns about Mr. Mexroth. I told Dennis McNulty that my original plan was to share my concerns at the upcoming board meeting, but after watching the video of the January 7, 2025 special board meeting, decided to send my message directly to him. During a special meeting, one of the board members was dismissive of the clerk of the board, not interested in subjecting myself to a similar situation in public forum. February 7, 2025, I emailed Dennis McNulty a copy of the LA Regional Water Quality Control Board report dated August 14, 2023 for the site inspection performed regarding the sanitary sewer overflow in Moore Park that was reported May 2nd, 2023 by Ventura County Waterworks District Number 1. In this correspondence, I included a link to the February 6, 2025 article in the Ojai Valley News. I commented to Dennis McNulty that, depending on your interpretation, here's that Mr. Mexroth is a turnaround manager that is going to retain and recruit staff with knowledge, skills, and attitude to form a cohesive wastewater team. February 12, 2025, Dennis McNulty called me to discuss my concerns, and he told me that he would call Mr. Mexroth to discuss this matter. Later that afternoon, I watched the video recording of the February 10, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. In this meeting, Mr. Mexroth presented discussion on the capital improvement program for the collection system. Mr. Mexroth recommended that a new study of the sewer system be performed at a cost of around $100,000 to $150,000. Mr. Mexroth stated that staff only knows the system fairly well, kind of have a plan. His comments imply that staff does not know how to do their job, far from accurate. It's not conducive to form a cohesive wastewater team. Stan and Mr. Mexroth shared the draft capital improvement program plan for the collection system with a consultant that he knows for getting opinions for the cost to prepare the new sewer study, which is discussed at the February 12, 2025 Finance Committee meeting. This action could be a conflict with the qualifications-based selection process, Minnie Brooks Act, consultant selection process. Based on several discussions with Mr. Mexroth about capital improvement projects for the wastewater treatment plant, I would not be surprised if he is sharing district details with contractors prior to bidding, which could be a conflict with district's purchasing policy. For the past few months, Mr. Mexroth has ignored staff recommendations and selected a much different recommendation on some key board items, including the gap tax purchase. I have concerns about the impacts to ratepayers result from more recommendations like this. All aware that staff is currently developing the district's budget for upcoming study sessions and board adoption. In closing, I suggest that the board disclose all ex parte communication regarding Mr. Mexroth, review their strategic plan, conduct a management audit as outlined in this plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. Okay, moving on to consent items, items 6, 7, and 8. We have something here that anybody wants to pull off and discuss.
I just have a quick question for Allison. About 6 or 8 months ago, we had one of these agreement for real properties. We pulled off for the time being. The Guzman agreement, the one that we pulled off about 6.
It is not.
Okay, wanted to mentally be able to check in about. Thank you.
Director Quillisi.
Thank you. This is on the agreement on the property at 82 Arnaz. Looks like, is this a new build of a house and a new build of an ADU? Or is this 2 unpermitted connections? But I couldn't tell from the agreement.
We don't generally actually, the agreement is fairly generically worded. Not overtly say exactly what the violation was. Specifically, essentially an unpermitted connection is generally going to be either an unpermitted non-labeled accessory dwelling unit. In this particular instance, it was a house that was actually divided into 3 separate living spaces within the same footprint of the original single-family dwelling unit. So it was neither of those things.
So now there are going to be 3 capacity charges or,
No, in this particular one, the cease violation agreement, they actually demolished the entire interior of the house and reinstated it back to its original condition as a condition of the transfer of the property. And that's been inspected to verify that it is back to its original state and acceptable to the district. This cease violation agreement essentially states and notices any interested party that any additional connection would be unpermitted and a secondary violation of district code.
there is currently an existing connection from the main residence and one from an ADU.
For Arden's does not have an ADU. It is a single family dwelling unit.
There are 2 capacity charges in the agreement.
There shouldn't. In the agreement, because what happens is essentially they're required to purchase additional capacity if they violate the district code of regulations. In the alternate agreement, the agreement affecting real property for the deferred agreement, you may have the pages, if they run into each other in the agenda item. There are 2 capacity units because that one is a new construction accessory dwelling unit. So there's 2 separate agreements in that agenda item. One is to abate a violation. The other one is to finance an additional capacity charge for a total of 2.
I'm sorry, it's the,
Is there a specific page?
well, this was pages 25 to 40, so this is the first agreement
Correct,
with Mr. Brindis.
correct. So this one will only have 1 capacity charge. This 1 capacity charge is all they had. It was 1 single family dwelling unit. There are not multiple dwelling units on this property.
Okay, and the other one has 2 because of the violation.
The other one is financing too because they applied and pulled a permit for a new construction accessory dwelling unit. So they're paying a proportional cost for it.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at Exhibit C, page 37. It shows 2 capacity units. And that is before we get to see it, that's Exhibit C. There's an Exhibit D that follows, which still refers to 82 Arnez. That's
This-
why I was confused. There's 2 capacity units on page 37.
Yeah, I would say that this exhibit could be amended to essentially demonstrate a per capacity charge, since this one had up to 3. And then essentially a violation, whether it's adding 1 or reinstating to the 3, it would apply per capacity that they violate. I would recommend amending this exhibit to read more clearly as far as what the penalty will be per capacity unit.
So the estimated schedule of fees and charges and penalties is largely penalties.
Well, the penalty is that they don't actually get to abate the violation. Again, they must purchase the capacity to serve it as if it was a dwelling unit. So we will give them the option to remove it and sign yet another agreement that they violated. So it predetermines what essentially the violation remedy is, and that is to purchase capacity. You won't get any other option. So first time we allow them to essentially reinstate it back to its original condition, and then abates the need for additional capacity. If they reviolate and do yet another unpermitted connection, basically reinstall the exact same thing again, they have no choice but to purchase the capacity to serve that.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? No? Any other directors have anything they'd like to pull off? We'll entertain a motion for 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a question on 8 as well.
Okay,
Page 54, there's a check for the city of Ojai.
I know which one you're talking about.
Is that, it doesn't seem to be a business license. Is that an encroachment permit?
Yeah, it's the renewal of our annual encroachment permit.
Oh, they're doing that again. Okay.
They are, with some specific language and conditions as far as pre-noticing when we're going to do work in specific areas. We've come to an agreement on how we're going to, abide by some additional restrictions that came into play this year.
That have to do with the 5-year, the recently passed 5-year term after paving for any work can be done.
I don't think, I think it
It's
just.
already a county standard, so we're used to that sort of moratorium.
Well, how does that practically work? I mean, if there's a leak, I mean, it's what,
Let's do a full width pave, either a full lane or a full,
so instead of an.
no patching. Yeah. It's not the,
The new conditions on our annual encouragement permit have more to do with pre-noticing them of work so that
Yeah.
essentially they get first right of refusal for anything else they may have going on or feel like it would impede traffic flow or anything to that effect.
When you're a year behind in your paving, it affects things. Darn schedules.
Secondly, on page 55, there's a check to CSRMA for 173,000.
Yes.
Seemed extraordinary.
That's our largest insurance policy. That's our annual renewal of our pooled liability policy. So that's basically our largest blanket policy that we have.
Okay.
All the rest of our policies are individually written sub-policies like flood, crime, that cover just the structures, et cetera. So this is our major liability policy and it is spendy.
Thank you.
And that's for 1 year. Or those lunch, those breakfasts at those conferences.
Are you good with that now? We have
Thank you,
something.
sir.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval of 6, 7, and 8.
Second that.
In a second, Allison, would you call the roll, please?
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Berg,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Director Ulrich.
Yes.
Director Curtis.
Yes.
Chair Stone.
I voted twice.
Oh, good, sorry.
President.
Yeah. New
We needed a 7 somewhere.
Yeah. New person. All right, moving on to item 9, resolution number 2025-04, resolution setting the salary for the manager.
So this is purely a housekeeping item, if you recall. You were asked retroactively to establish by resolution our contract employee via our general manager by CalPERS, that those be established on our salary resolution at all times. If you remember, we had to sort of correct that retroactively. We're trying to be ahead of the game and be sure that that gets established and is reflective on the schedule every time we pass a salary schedule. So this is establishing that to correspond with the permanent employment contract that was passed by the board about a month ago.
Thank you, Allison. Guess we need any questions or? Need a motion.
I'll move for approval of 9.
Second.
I got Ulrich as a second. You could be next, Jack.
Okay.
Next second. Allison, would you call the roll, please?
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Berg,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
and Chair Stone.
Yes. Moving on to item 10, purchase of small pickup truck for use by the Environmental Compliance Inspector budget adjustment number 2025-17 for $32,913 from escrow.
All right, thank you. For your consideration is the purchase of the truck that Chair Stone just discussed. We're expecting to have the environmental inspector come on board in mid-March. The vehicle that the former environmental inspector was using is now used by the collection staff. It was a Ford F-150. The idea that staff had was perhaps we could use a little bit of a smaller pickup truck for the environmental compliance inspector. And we took it to the finance committee for their consideration, and they concurred. They asked that we bring it here for your consideration. So what we did is we reached out to a handful, I think it was 6 different vendors, and we spec'd a truck, a 2024, 2025 new pickup truck, smaller mid-sized truck, 4 6-cylinder, 4-door, white, and we attempted to get delivery to Ventura County by April 17th. The reason we chose April 17th is we feel that the environmental compliance inspector will probably be riding shotgun with existing staff for about a month. And so it gives us a little bit more wiggle room. A little bit more wiggle room may provide a little bit of better pricing. Yeah, we went out to the vendors. All but one of the vendors were local. If you go to page 78 in your board packet, there's a table that shows what we received for quotes. The low bid was a company or vendor called Sourcewell. It's the National Auto Fleet. They do not have that in stock. They would build it per order. It's the Sourcewell is it's the company that we would that for fleet cars. They are the low bid. The next lowest bid was off by about $600. Unfortunately, that low bid at DCH Ford and TO, they sold that vehicle, so that's off the table. The next lowest bid out there is for $34,800. With a couple $100, I think I would ask for consideration of having it in stock and local, but for nearly $2,000, I think best opportunity is to at least consider going to Sourcewell or have you guys debate it. If we were to purchase this vehicle, we leave $15,000 in the vehicle reserve fund. We currently have a balance of $47,950, $948.97. So my recommendation is that consider going to Sourcewell for $32,912. I don't have a time of delivery for that. That's the big unknown. They won't commit until they won't commit to a time until we commit to a purchase. And ask that if you approve that, then you would authorize me to complete the purchase when it comes here, sign any paperwork and make the budget adjustment.
Scott? Questions?
I have a question.
I have one. And
Jack.
reading through the spec with references, that's going to be a hybrid truck.
I don't think so. I think it's just a regular 4-cylinder. It's a Ford Maverick XLT.
Well, specs call for it to be a hybrid.
I think I am looking at that. I think that they're all listed as hybrid trucks now. It's a battery, so it's not a plug-in hybrid. It would just be a simple battery assist.
Okay.
Scott, if the lead time to get this truck is 3 or 4 months, is it possible that the fill-in vehicle could be Mr. Palmer's? It's here somewhere. Right?
Yes, exactly. So, yes, I think over the long term, the environmental compliance inspector is going to, a pickup truck would be the best choice. And I say that because there's a gizmo that they use. It's called a sludge judge. It goes down in some of the wet wells, and it's nothing that one would want to put in their inside their SUV. It's not appropriate for that. But I think we could probably work amongst staff to use the extra vehicle we have here. And I think if we needed to get by for 3 or 4 months, we should be able to. And if the environmental compliance inspector needed to get to a dirty position, I think we could probably move vehicles around through engineering, through collections. I think we can accommodate.
And we'd still have an extra vehicle.
Well, we have a vehicle that we're using frequently now. So the front administrative staff, they're using a vehicle frequently. Tatiana and Liz are using a vehicle. So we're using more vehicles than we have in the past. Bradshaw is driving the Honda Odyssey. Bradshaw.
A lot of soccer balls in
I guess my point is, I think we don't have extra vehicles right now. If everyone is out doing their work, the environmental compliance inspector will not have.
We'll need next vehicle.
Yes.
Anything else? a motion. Gentlemen,
You're up, Jack.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
in a second. Allison, would you call the roll, please?
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Byrd,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Yes.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. All right. Item 11, planning discussion for vehicle replacement policies.
Thank you. In this discussion, this is a discussion that went to the Finance Committee also. They reviewed it. It's quite in-depth. There's a lot of numbers in here. So if you have a lot of questions, please ask. Bottom line is, upon coming here, I think that there's an opportunity for the district to kind of predict vehicle maintenance costs, prioritize some of these vehicle replacements, set a budget for the allocations, reduce costs, and perhaps even promote some safety and reliable vehicles. I say that in that Bradshaw is correct. The van carries a lot of soccer balls, but it also lacks, it's 15-ish years old, and it doesn't have a backup camera, and there's some what people would consider modern amenities that are not there. I think it's suitable and it works, but I think it's also close to its end of its life. And I think we have some other vehicles that are that way. So the bottom line is I spent a fair amount of time looking at our vehicles. I did a fair amount of time looking at academic studies of various agencies across the United States and Canada. And what I found out was that light duty fleet vehicles, so pickup trucks and small SUVs, usually have a life cycle of around 9 to 10 years for agencies. And that usually equates to about 120 to 150,000 miles. Historically, heavy duty vehicles go a little longer in time. The reasons often given is that they are built heavy duty, so they're a little bit more robust. Oftentimes, they have a little bit more prescribed maintenance. That helps out with the longevity, and they're expensive. So no one wants to replace very, very, very expensive items on a short turnaround. So if you flip over to page 2 on page 101, that's a summary of existing vehicles for OVSD. One caveat in here is the mileage that's listed in the approximate mileage category. I believe that was from December of 2024. So it's gone up from there. What's important to note in here is that we have around $366,000 of light duty vehicles, about 17% of the fleet. We have $1.85 million in heavy duty vehicles. That's 83% of the fleet. And of that, 33% of it is the GAPVAX. The GAPVAX really was the piece of equipment that we purchased that was the eye opener for me. Knowing that we needed that GAPVAX, it had 12 years of use on it. It was starting to underperform. And the fact that it's $750,000 was a big eye opener, saying to myself, yeah, we probably need to plan into the long-term future on how do we replace these vehicles. So what I looked at is given the academic findings that I talked to you about, what I'm recommending is that we consider replacing light duty vehicles at 10 years and 130,000 miles. And we look at replacing heavy duty vehicles in the 12 to 15 year range with mileage that's commensurate. If we were to do that, I've kind of forward engineered what we'd be looking at. Bottom line, if you go over to page 103, we're looking at about $200,000 per year to fund the perpetual replacement of the fleet. The total fleet has a value now, given the new vehicle that you just approved, the small pickup truck, has a total value of $2.2 million. Right, that's kind of the replacement cost, my estimated replacement cost of the current with new vehicles. If we were to have a vehicle reserve and we were to fund it $200,000 annually, it's going to start right now with about $14,000 in the pot, which is what we're going to have. over the course of years, it's gonna hit up, and it could be as large in 2035, if you go to page 104, of over $1 million. In it. The reality is you're gonna be looking at another gap fix, which is, my best estimate is $750,000 adjusted for inflation to 2024 values. And then you're gonna have to purchase, there was a couple other cars in there because they're gonna be on some of the 10-year plans. So you're gonna be down to $8,000 or $9,000 again. So what I'm looking for is either direction from you as deemed appropriate, or that we consider making light duty vehicles eligible for replacement in 10 years and 130,000 miles. We consider making heavy duty vehicles eligible for replacement in 12 to 15 years based on condition and mileage. And that we shoot for a goal of $200,000 annually, adjusted for 2024, adjusted for inflation to 2024 values, as our vehicle replacement reserve, that we would fund the vehicle reserve. And if we were to do that, the idea would be that we have the ability to kind of perpetually operate the fleet that we have.
Mr. Berg, yeah, Scott, the 200,000, is that an arbitrary number, or did you actually look at the last 10 years to see how much we spent?
I looked at the last 10 years to see how much we spent. I looked at the current replacement values of the fleet. Now, the answer is no, it's not an arbitrary number. I know it actually, I have a spreadsheet and it comes out to 198 and change, and that seemed a little odd because I'm not that good to predict the future of value of trucks. So the answer is 200,000 was the number, rounded to the nearest 10,000 that got us with not dipping into the negative on a perpetual motion, and, in essence, on a perpetual consideration for page 103 for chart 1. Yeah, so it's, and again, it's not based off of it's in 2024 dollars, so it would all be based off of inflation, right? So in hindsight, it's the value of the vehicles that we've bought at the prices that we bought them for. My expectation is in the future, they're going to go up. Therefore, the contributions would also need to go up on an inflationary standard. It was easier for me to go into past and do it on what we bought it for or what it was replacement value was in 2024.
And the finance committee did look at this.
Yes, the finance committee looked at it and asked that I bring it to the whole board for consideration. There was some minutia in my presentation to the finance committee that I did not bring to this presentation. That minutia is the crane truck that we have. You have a crane truck. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. It shows up on table 2, page 102. It's the 2018 crane truck. Also shows up. It shows up on 101 as the crane truck. It was a $404,000 piece of equipment. Well, we didn't buy it for 404. 404 is my estimate of what it's worth in 2024, adjusted from inflation from when we bought it in 2018 up to 2024. Where I'm going with it is it's not super utilized. I think if when it comes for, I need to mull it around in my head and with staff and frankly present it to you, is what would be the best use for OVSD for that crane truck. And that was part of my consideration to the finance committee. And at this point, I think we probably could be getting out of the crane truck business of that size, but I think it's a separate discussion.
You're in touch.
I just have a question, which is more of a point of order. I support the recommendation, all that you're trying to do here. I'm not sure we're ready to adopt policy today, because normally a policy is written out and detailed and has all the I's dotted and T's crossed. It's not just part of a staff report. So my thought was, agree amongst ourselves today, do we support your idea or not? Ask you to come back with a formal policy that we can adopt next time. That's my thought.
Scott discussed that with me, and I think that was the idea here, was to just bring it to the full board to get any input and then come back with a resolution adopting a policy that's tailored to all agree on.
And if we get out of the crane truck business, that's a couple of years worth of stuff we don't have to replace.
Yeah.
You rent it?
You could, I think you would, my inclination on the crane truck is you would probably not get out of the entire crane truck. I think you would go to a Ford 550, which is a smaller crane truck. So instead of having a $404,000 crane truck, the price right now, I think is around $215,000. So I don't know that you would necessarily be less one vehicle. You would just be less $200,000 of reoccurring expense over the course of 12 to 15 years.
Talked about that at the finance committee meeting as well. The existing crane truck, hard to put into position at times, yeah.
Could add one more thing. One other thing we talked about was whether the 200,000 was going to be a hard commitment, or that was more of a goal to be, strive to achieve based on conditions. If we needed to move money from somewhere else or budget didn't allow it. The idea was maybe we don't want to pin ourselves down to that, because then we couldn't do the 200,000, we'd be violating the policy and would have to amend it and things like that. So maybe that's something the board would like to discuss too, is how much wiggle room do you want on that?
Yeah, opinion would be we stick to a hard number, because I think we've seen in the past that we've let a few things slip that way that maybe we shouldn't have. So it would probably be better to have the number now, but that's for the board to discuss. That's just my.
Question.
Director Curtis.
Okay, I did some use of the numbers, and I figured on 12 years at $200,000 a year. Then I took the value of the replacements at this time for the vehicles, and you came out with $5,000 over that. $5,000 is not going to cover the added expenses. So I think you're going to have to increase your 200,000 for inflation every year, or set it at 3% to make it come out, to have the actual money to do it.
Should we let the 200,000 go up with inflation?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve 11 A and B, and on 11C, that we start with a $200,000 number, that we annually review that, light of inflation, light of the mix of vehicles, as if we replace the crane truck, that could affect things. But that we start at 200,000, review it every year. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? Are we gonna have adopt this and then Scott can put us something together? Bring back to the board, or do we like to have Scott put something together and bring it to the board?
I think it would probably be better now that we have direction for Scott to bring back the policy consistent with the direction we received tonight, and then formally approve it.
So I'll adjust my motion to say that we direct staff, come back with a policy doing what I said.
Second agreed.
Thank you, sir.
Further questions? We need a roll call, Allison.
Director Kintosh,
Yes.
Director Byrd,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
Director Curtis,
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Okay, I think maybe we should take maybe the information items now, see if anybody's got any questions or anything they like to pull off. And then come back to session. So do we have anything?
I have a couple of questions on 13.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Regarding item 13, I just want to make sure I'm looking at these of numbers correctly. It looks to me like of our 15.6 million in cash available, let's call it, or all the funds, and only about 4.6 really available fund disasters, and the other 11 not discretionary. You have to reserve those funds. Is that outright?
That would be a generally accurate statement. That being said, even those funds are fenced specific to the reserve they're in. So it would take board action and review by legal counsel to determine how ability the board would have to move those funds around based on an already adopted policy to somewhat liquidate them to address an emergency. So the only fund you technically have available, depending on what type of emergency it would be, if it was a collection system emergency, that would be your collection system replacement reserve plus your contingency fund. If it was a treatment plant emergency, it'd be your treatment plant replacement reserve plus your contingency fund. Anything else beyond that would be a evaluation of the policy and how those are fenced. But essentially, those are the only ones that are really available to easily move by
We've been
board.
through 2 collection system crises in the last 2 years. And that has so far cost us more than we would have available.
Yes, I mean, technically, we didn't technically move funds around for those emergencies because we had
More at the time.
more at the time and we had already essentially allocated some funds to some projects. So we had the cash flow available to cover some of that. That would likely not be the case if we had an emergency this year. We would be actually evaluating these funds to see what is truly spendable and available because our actual liquidable balance is significantly lower.
Often question.
Fred, Jack.
In 2023, we had 3.2 million at the county. And now there's about $150,000 left there. Did you use that money for the problems we had, the emergency problems we had?
The funds at the county is actually what feeds O&M in its entirety. So that is a live account. It changes essentially from week to week, depending on what it is that we're essentially cutting checks and making disbursements for. We take draws out of that amount of money. So each time we get a tax roll disbursement, that replenishes those funds. Essentially, by the time that we are due for our next tax disbursement, those funds are non-existent. We essentially utilize that as our sort of revolving draw account to fund O&M. That money does not sit there any longer. We used to send any excess funds that we had sitting in the county to PFM for reinvestment. There are no excess funds any longer.
Thank you. And just one other question. Pages 142 to 145, there's a column called coupon rate. Is that the annual yield if everything is held to maturity?
Defer that to PFM or somebody with a more subject matter expertise. This is just a printout of their report.
Would we ask that question and have them come back
Of course.
with an answer next time then? Because it looks to me, if that's if that is what the coupon rate is, then we've got some coupons that are paying us 0.5% a year. That just doesn't sound right. Thank you.
Further,
Yeah, I have a question.
in touch.
Page 172 of the agenda packet. The discussion of district injuries, illness record. And it's
Yes.
calendar year 2025, 39 workdays lost in the collection system. And it says, as of the date of this report, it's been 73 calendar days since the work-related injury has occurred. 73 days would put us into 2024, so I'm a little puzzled. Can you just explain what this injury is? Is it multiple people? Has the person healed or?
That is one singular person that has not returned to work.
Was it a workplace injury?
It was.
Those 39 days are all in this calendar year?
Correct.
All we're allowed to ask about.
I defer to legal on that.
What's the question again?
They want more
What
specific.
happened to the 39 lost work days?
And that, the only thing we shouldn't delve into is any details about the medical condition or any, private type medical matters. You can delve into time that's lost and things of that nature.
Okay. That's, I figure we can't ask.
When the person's going to be coming back to work approximately?
There is possibility they will be returning to work in some part very soon. Full return to work is to be determined.
One more. Page 164. I think this is for Bradshaw. What is an emergency USA?
Underground service alert.
Do we have sensors underground?
Underground service alerts are when we go out and actually mark places that they're proposing to dig. We go out and mark our lines,
Okay.
so that whoever comes on site knows that we have a line.
I had not seen the phrase before and didn't understand it. Thank you.
Dig alert.
Dig alert. Okay.
I'd like to thank Randy for his little summary on this. Awesome.
Thank you.
Summary
Summary done.
compacted one page.
Very good.
Great job. Think further. Control it.
Having brought up the issue of PFAS, biosolids, as a consequence of attending that same conference, I am now disabused of my concerns entirely. The speaker was supposed to be the final speaker at the conference, was supposed to be the biosolids, the director of biosolids for the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, who, due to apparently a change in the administration, was directed not to show up and speak. So, the outgoing, I'm not sure is exactly his title, but basically handles science for CASA. On short notice, apparently,
Greg the guru?
yes, Greg retired this month on the 14th. He got in a substitute on short notice, a very interesting, plain-spoken environmental scientist, I think associated with the University of Washington, who gave the presentation, the upshot of which was that the presence of PFAS in biosolids was essentially almost a smokescreen. It was a reaction to concern for how biosolids could potentially be contaminating soil and, more importantly, aquifers.
throughout the country. When it was time, the end of her presentation, when it was time for questions, and there were a lot of questions and very well questions from folks from a lot of different agencies. About the first or second question was, well, how endemic are PFAS and PFOS in our environment? She looked up at the ceiling and said, well, let me put it this way. Your furniture, your upholstery, carpets, your chapstick container. Those bags that you get your fries in, especially from the Golden Arches. You notice that that grease doesn't bleed through them. The pajamas that all of our children wear. She basically, after going down a list of about 18 or 19 places, she says it's entirely endemic in our environment, in our bodies. And if it's not in our water, it's a kind of almost a miracle. And so of course the follow-up question was, why was there any focus put on this at all? And that was basically the way she said it, in a more perhaps diplomatic way than I would say it, is that the manufacturers of those chemicals, which, I mean, everyone appreciates Gore-Tex if you're out in the rain, is big three chemical companies, 3M, DuPont, and can't remember the third one. In any case, they kind of, since their products have been so endemic in our life, kind of wanted to take the focus, and perhaps that was from a legal liability perspective, and kind of shift it over to biosolids as a fraction. So I'm saying this from the perspective of having been concerned about our biosolids and any other agencies' biosolids being potentially detrimental to environment, and as well as a liability downstream liability. It's everywhere, and it was introduced into our environment decades ago, and at this point it is everywhere.
They cause cancer or anything?
Well, they haven't. I have some associations with Glenn County, which is in coastal Georgia, southeast Georgia, and in Glenn County, it's a relatively small community there. Brunswick's the county seat. Maybe 40,000 people in that city. And that area happens to be the site of not one but 3 Superfund sites as a consequence of past industrial practices, shall we say? And they test. They just did a test of about 500 folks of their blood. Anybody who's been there lived there for more than 20 years, their blood. So, and that's anecdotal and different than anything was presented at the CASA conference. So, it's too big chemistry.
The question that occurs for us then is, should we worry about the fact that it's in our biosolids?
Well, there's a
Can it get any worse?
Once again, the connection can be made that, well, if there was uncontaminated soil, for example, say some random field that has now become a carrot farm in southern Central Valley, an argument could be made. However, anywhere adjacent to that, it can be found from another source. So the question is, how are you going to distinguish by making it into a focus that isn't actually the product? It's really not something I could say that would be easy to identify as a source. Made any sense? Probably didn't.
So PFAS and PFAS are everywhere and they come from everywhere
In
now.
the manufactured environment, in the commonly
Yeah,
manufactured environment
yeah.
in your home. So if it gets out and it's contaminating soil or water, there's going to always be a question about the source.
Thank you for that good news, Graham.
I was interested in it, and now I'm disabused of interest in it because it was too appalling.
I think what I would, if nobody else has got anything on 16 through 18, I would like to go ahead and get general manager comments before we break into the closed session, because then we lose a lot of these people when we come back, and perhaps it would be interesting for Director Curtis to hear your comments.
Thanks, Director Stone. Let's see, like some important things. First thing I'd like to notice is I want to give a solid shout out and note of appreciation to the treatment plant operators. So we had a failure of the belt press about a week and a half or so ago. We thought we could get it up and running. In the end, it's kind of frankly, it's a story. The failure is a story of a comedy of errors, in that we ordered some materials a year or so ago that got delivered. It turns out that either the gearbox or the motor runs at a slightly different speed than the other ones that were installed 30 some years ago. Nobody knew this, and the new one started operating, and it kind of pulled itself apart, the belt filter press. The weak part that broke was the hydraulic system. It was also 30 years old, so the hydraulic system gave up. One of the arms gave up, and the hydraulic pump gave up. It sounds like terrible news. The great news is Bradshaw was able to reach out and get a mobile filter press that was already in the county, get it delivered, get it wired up because it takes power, get it plumbed up with water because it takes our production water to run this thing. And they had it running last Friday. And so we were pressing solids again and moving them out. And that's really the name of the game for us, is to keep the solids out of the treatment train so that we can meet our goals, our expectations. So let's see, I'm going through my notes here. And then back to the troubleshooting. So Riley in particular, was super good at troubleshooting. The manufacturer, I don't want to say their name because it's not fair to them, but they needed some help through the situation, and Riley was able to give them that help through of sending them plates, working through, understanding what was going on. And I think in the end, they're going to deliver us the equipment that we need to get it up and running. That's where we're at with the belt filter press. So it's working again right now. There's going to be a cost associated. That cost is probably going to be coming our way to take a look at it for the rental. So expect that. We're also making some ongoing strides with the denitrification filters. So I know the same crew down there is working with the PhDs, and they're working through. They're making some small changes to all 6 of the sand filters at this time, and it is a very complex system because the reality is it's based on bioorganisms that are growing in there. The problem being is it's on the downside of our treatment train, and if they bloom, then they slough off and we end up with more solids again, but it's at the backside of our system. So it is quite a down there. They're making small progress, but they are making progress. And the intent being is we need to meet this new limit that goes into effect in June. I also want to give a shout out to a team. We have a kind of a team announcement here. So Danny was a new collection system operator. He started on the 10th. He's getting along swimmingly with the crew over at the collection system. Josue started on the 18th. He's the new grade 4 treatment operator that's working for Bradshaw down there. And we had Tatiana. I forgot when Tatiana started. But she is the new engineering technician that's been working with Liz. And I'm very happy to report that all three of these folks seem to be to joining the team. Right. Super happy with them. So along those lines, it's a shout out to the interview committees that brought them in, the people that vetted the resumes, the onboarding process. It's a win.
Good to hear. How's our foaming problem? We still experiencing some foaming here.
I'd be more than happy to speak to the foaming issue. So you saw foam in the plant. Where our water goes out of the plant, it goes up to a defoamer. We saw no foam there. Water goes down through a channel and then drops off into the river. Where it drops off, it goes down through a series of rocks. So you can see a little bit of foam, and that's what we first noticed. We usually don't see a lot of foam. You might see a little dab here and there, but it just kind of goes away. So it was noticeable. I reported it to the water boards, and we subsequently took photos every day, and we did a little bit more investigation. That foam, even though it's not at our River Station R3 above the plant's discharge, if you go between River Station R3 and our plant discharge, which is River Station R4, there is foam there. It's in the eddies, it's back in the corners. Also downstream, a few thousand yards downstream, where Canada Larga Canyon comes into the river, which is just below our, what they call R5 sample point, where it drops off, that flow stream from Canada Larga, where it drops off in the river, ton of foam there too. My conclusion, it's naturally occurring. We have lower water temperatures. The surface water tension is greater due to lower water temperatures, and we have foam. The water boards has not asked me to give them an update. If they will, I'll give it to them sooner. If they don't, I'm going to kind of surmise like what I just spoke of and provide some photos and show the foam.
Short, not our foam.
Yeah, it's kind of naturally occurring. We're still scratching our heads, and whether it's in the river, whether it's in the plant, if it's in the river water, it's going to be in the plant water. It comes around full circle.
If it's upriver from us.
Pardon me?
Say if it's upriver from us.
Yeah. And it's all kind of the same water, if you will, whether we're pulling it from the aquifer or whether we're getting it from Casitas. I mean, it's all kind of the same water, if you will. We see it in the plant. Well, for obvious reasons, we're seeing it in the river too. So that's.
Thanks, Bradshaw. You're welcome. Good report. Is that it, Scott? You have anything else?
That's it for me.
Liz, thank you for being here. I know that's a great sacrifice to make on meeting nights to have your husband and your baby come down and see you for a minute. Get you started.
Cute baby.
I appreciate having you here. That, we will move back to item 12, which will be closed session. Conference with legal counsel for existing litigation, government code 54956.
This is in the matter of Richard Vane versus the district. And after closed session, the board will reconvene an open session and report on the action taken.
Good.
Yeah, we
Close the closed session.
okay. So it's 7:12. Back in from closed session with nothing to report. And we will adjourn the meeting at 7:12.
I had a couple of small questions. One might be this, I don't know.